In this house, the most dire, horrible events took place.
You are not content with the stories. Somebody's lives will come. Be my victim.
Through watching scenes of violence, through watching scenes of transgression, through watching scenes of horror. There's an enormous amount of sort of abattoir of excess.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Good evening, folks. I hope you're doing well. I'm sure you can understand why I've used the classic intro. It is not just because I am relentlessly copyright claimed on the other one. It's because it actually features footage from tonight's film. I couldn't, when I was putting it together, I wanted classic horrors. I wanted good spooky vibes, and I thought I had to go straight for Dead of Night. And hopefully you will recognize it. Hello, folks. People trickling in now. It's good to see. I notice it can be a bit of a quieter show when I'm covering a classic horror, the really ancient ones. I always wonder if that's sort of people like fewer people have done the homework and they don't want to be called on by a teacher for a question. I'll be testing that theory as I go on. Anyway, welcome to everyone who's here. I hope you enjoyed the viewing, and welcome to the 92nd episode of Double Feature Horror Show. I've got some very good guests for tonight. Guess who's back? Back again. Harry's back. Tell a friend. How you doing, Harry?
I'm doing all right this evening. Thank you very much. It's very great to be back on. I really appreciate the invite. And may I say, I really appreciate you getting me on for this film in particular. I had never watched it before. And for those out there watching who may not have done their homework, you really should, because this was quite a treat, I must say. I was shocked by how much I enjoyed this.
Oh, brilliant. I had two purposes. I thought something that's got a lot of interpretation, a certain amount of interpretive edge to it is going to appeal to a Lynch fan. And also, I just really love showing the super old movies to younger audiences. I just love it. And it's never failed to delight me.
Yes, I did get a sense, when I was watching it, before I watched it, thinking that, okay, it's about some anthology, it's got dreams involved in it. Okay, there's going to be a certain allegorical, maybe, lens that I can look at this through. And I started watching it with that lens, trying to see what I could interpret as I went along. But then I just ended up getting caught up in the atmosphere of it and in the characters and in the acting. So I don't know exactly how much detailed analytical thought that I can bring to this, but I am excited to talk about it nonetheless.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you won't be alone in that. We have another guest returning for... Wait, you were here last week, so it's fine. But what was the intro I've got for you? Oh, yes. He doesn't do black music. He doesn't do white music. He makes fight music for high school kids. It's that crime guy.
I put lives at risk when I drive like this.
Instantly.
I put wives at life. I put
wives at risk with a knife like this.
Yes, thank you. It's been a long week and it's still going. Great to be back again.
I knew I could just introduce you with any Eminem lyric and you'd pick it up straight away.
Well, I mean, if my brain's working and firing on all cylinders, then yes, typically. But I screwed that one up.
It's Thursday. Who's firing on all cylinders on a Thursday?
Can we do a retake? Oh shoot, this is live.
Alec Baldwin? No.
Oh, ladies. Oh yeah. Well, okay. Let's get some true crime news out there. He is set to be charged with involuntary manslaughter. Just so you know.
Ooh.
What's that going to bring him? Is a fine, sentence, jail time?
No idea at this stage. I only got the
Alright.
notification earlier today. I need to look through the article, but like I said, I've not had time. But yeah, doesn't look like he's going to get entirely off scot-free.
I spy a YouTube short on the way.
Yeah. Keep giving me ideas like that.
All right. Also, so I'm seeing some very familiar faces in here. I want to say hi, Marina. I know you said you don't always make it live, so good to see you and thanks for commenting. Folks, if you're in here, we always want to hear from you in the chat. It's lovely. Pitch in there with the comments. It helps on the algo, and I love to hear people's responses, especially when it's these slightly more out there movies that most people aren't going to come across. It's always good to see. I also see Mergu in here. Mergu, you absolute star. We were streaming last night, recording a bonus episode for channel members, which is talking about 3 more Twilight Zone episodes, because I'm a little bit addicted. I just love them. They're so cozy. We covered The Grave. We covered The Howling Man, gothic horror there, and one of the all-time classics, Eye of the Beholder. I thought we've got to talk about that one. So
Is this Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone you're on about?
Oh no!
Nah, the
Oh
proper one,
no!
mate.
Goodness, no. Unfortunately, we are going to get to that, but that's a way off. A lot of this year is going to be horror anthologies, and funnily enough, the Twilight Zone gets remade like constantly. So eventually,
You're covering
we
the
will
tragic
cover...
1980s version.
Yeah, the movie, definitely. I think that's probably going to be the 3rd time we go to anthologies, because we've got a little bit of horror, Hammer Horror and Amicus ones, which are unrelated in the middle, because Twilight Zone went a bit dormant in the 70s. So, but we'll be featuring a lot anyway. That is an exclusive for channel members, because I want to reward people who are going the extra mile and supporting this channel, which you can do on Subscribestar or here on YouTube. You can get early access, you can get exclusive content, and you are helping me fund my very specific interests of Blockbuster. It's all coming together, and I'm buying more research material as we speak. Anyway, I will stop shilling, because I'm far too English to do it accurately. However, I have 2 wonderful guests. Would you like to do a little bit of shilling before we get into it? Maybe TCG, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, sure. I've recently put out a... Oh. I see Fez. He's beat me to it. So I'm going to step over him. I have actually recently set up a TikTok.
Oh
my
dear,
sins.
we're regressing.
Well, if you're worried about the Chinese spying on us, on me, don't worry.
How's your
mate.
dancing coming along?
Oh, beautifully, mate. I'll tell you what, I've got muscles that I never even knew I had. I'll tell you
I'm
what,
sure you'll get to the split soon.
Do you know what? I'm working on that. But I did sort of pull something earlier, so I think I'm just going to go with the old like swivel stuff for now. But it's all right, because the last one got over 15,000 views, so have it. But yeah, so I'm on TikTok now at That Crime Guy. But if you're already subscribed to my channel, my YouTube Shorts is where you can watch the equivalent of the TikTok stuff, I guess. I did have a little short out the other day about 4 times that Karen Matthews acted oddly during her daughter's disappearance. And as I am on TikTok now, the next case is going to be TikTok themed. So members know, members of my channel will know what I will be covering, but everyone else, you're just going to have to wait.
All right. And by the way, that short that's some weird stuff in there.
I tell you what, for
the fish and chip shop one threw me off.
I mean, it's quite a good joke if someone else was saying what she said, but the fact
I have
that
no
she
context for this. Give me a little teaser of the content. Go on.
So Karen Matthews once went into a chip shop. This is while her daughter was missing, right? And the chip shop owner, feeling sorry for her and wanting to show like some gesture of support, gave her like a free bag of chips. And her response to that was, more of my kids should go missing if it means I get free food.
She wasn't even joking.
No.
Okay. All right.
I mean, if anyone else had said that, like if the chip shop owner had said, "Oh, Karen came in early today, gave her a free bag of chips," and if someone else had said that, dark humor, yes. Could you be offended? Of course. But I mean, you're that step removed from it. But when it's your own mother saying it, and it's like eyebrow raise.
I wonder how many free meals the McCann's got.
Oof. Oof.
Oof. Oof, indeed. Save
It all
yourself
for the
that,
cookie.
Well, they managed to pay their mortgage off with the donations they got.
Ooh, spicy territory. Harry, how about yourself? Any shills before we get into the subject matter?
Yes, for anybody who's not aware, I imagine most people will be. I work at the Lotus Eaters, so I can be seen on the daily podcast 1 p.m. English time. I don't know what the official title is, but it's English time. That's how I consider it. And I've recently got a new article out called The Anatomy of the Communist, which is a very good one. As far as I'm concerned, it's kind of a primer in the idea that communists aren't just purely based around economic factors. It's more of an ideology and a mindset that extends to everything that they think about. And I've also just earlier today filmed with Connor what I think will be my magnum opus, at least for the time being, which is about a certain celebrated civil rights leader and how he isn't exactly all he's cracked up to be. So stand out, keep a lookout for that one.
Very Sam Francis pilled. Good stuff.
I did actually read some of The Cult of Dr. King for this and referenced it in the video, so yes.
Nice. Well, all right, folks, you know I am far too shy to shill any more than that. Exemplary shilling, that's fantastic. All I will say is that, you can support the channel via Super Chats if you fancy it, or join as a member. And I did also get, if you haven't seen it yet, I will shamelessly shill my torturous look at the Craft Legacy. I'm feeling it might be my equivalent of your MLK video, Harry. It's my masterpiece.
I'll have to check that out. I've not seen that one.
It's really good.
I had the best.
Exciting for the weekend.
Yeah, I had the best compliment about it, which was someone writing saying, "There is no way I'm going near this movie, but I watched every second of your analysis," which I was like, yes, perfect.
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, if you can get people watching even when they don't care about the movie at all, that is a massive compliment. Before we go any further, though, and I'm sorry it took me a while to get to it, thank you very much, Marina, for the $4.99. Much appreciated. This is all going towards research, occasionally brandy, but a lot of it on research. Speaking of which, as we're covering Dead of Night from 1945, our go-to book is, of course, Ivor Butler's Horror in the Cinema, which has a fantastic photo of the author dressed up as Dracula on the back. It makes me very happy. He's a man after my own heart. Okay, folks. Well, we'll get into it now. Lovely to see people here. And there's one question I should ask TCG, which is, did you have any experience? I know, Harry, you'd never seen Dead of Night. This is fresh for you. TCG, had you got any experience with Dead of Night?
No, none at all. This was a first-time watch for me.
Oh, brilliant. Can I ask for quick impressions of it, or would you like to go for the more in-depth stuff?
No, I'm quick for quick impressions. Yeah, it was all right. One of the stories for me though completely sort of threw me off the vibe a bit, but it was more for the hilariousness of it than anything else. I felt like it was slightly forced in getting the anthology sort of stories out there, but yeah, on the whole, it was pretty fun. Yeah, quite liked it.
Nice. And Harry, sort of quick thoughts?
I thought it was excellent. I enjoyed the framing device, which wrapped around and the cyclical nature of the narrative. All of the actual anthology stories hit well for me. I know which story that crime guy is. TCG is talking about the golfing story.
Yes, that's the one.
But
Yes.
it didn't affect me that badly because I thought of it as a nice comedic break in between the tension that the rest of the film set up. Because honestly, I thought that part was hilarious the whole way through. That moment where the guy looks over because he's talking to his ghost friend, and he looks over and he can just see him making weird faces and waving his hands about by himself. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Or is that, it was just the golf. It was when they did the round of golf for that woman's affection, and then like the guy when he lost at the end, he was like, oh, okay then, and then just walks into the lake, and I'm like, wait, what? What's going on?
That was kind of funny.
Yeah.
I felt like doing that a few times, to be fair. So I get entirely where that guy's coming from.
Oh yeah.
My
absolutely.
favourite was this, where they're all sitting there with their vodka gimlets, just either side of her, and just saying she's a pain in the arse. I love it.
Oh yeah.
And
she's ruining our friendship, old chap.
I thought they might not even let her speak at all, but oh dear, they let her. It's a shame.
Sadly.
It would. I mean, she gets to speak later and gets a bit of character, but it would have been quite nice if they'd really leaned into how much of an object she was in it and just really amped up the humour on that.
I mean, if she'd been behaving like that, the ideal woman, I could see why they were both fighting over her, but...
Yes, well, there are some interesting things about that story that might win people over if they struggled with it. I know I've gone back and forth on it a few times and sometimes wondered, like, oh, does this have to be in there? It does massively swing the momentum of the film, but we will get into it. So, starting afresh, in case you have not seen it and you do not mind spoilers, because we will be spoiling the entire film, fully spoiling Dead of Night from 1945. This is your warning, but we will give a quick synopsis of the film. Who is feeling up to it?
Pretty sure I heard you say that, Horror Show.
Yeah, yes, Fez, a vodka gimlet, of course. What's wrong? I mean, you can have a gin gimlet, but I just think if you have a subtly flavoured gin, you're going to really lose it.
Am I
they're not going to come out.
if I ask what a gimlet is?
Oh, not a problem at all. It's a very simple cocktail, like about as simple as you can get. It's pretty much just vodka or gin with sugar syrup and lime. I don't think it even has any bitters in. I could be wrong.
Well, it sounds a bit fancy for me. It does.
Yeah, same here.
No problem. Okay, folks. Well, tell you what. If you want, I can do the overview.
Yeah.
Let's
Go
go
on
for
then.
that. Okay. Starting off with my wonderful screener here. Okay. So you'll note this, one thing that's already a bit weird is that this is made by Ealing Studios. You do not associate them with a horror movie. It is a very weird choice for them. And I think this is effectively unique in Ealing Studios' repertoire. It's made in 1945, and we see a lot of the hallmarks of horror anthologies. One thing that's quite interesting, so you've got a wraparound story, which I will describe in a bit, and then a bunch of individual stories presented by characters that we meet in the wraparound story. We also see something that's a bit unusual in that lots of Dead of Night is directed by different people. So the wraparound story is directed by Basil Dearden. The first story is also Basil Dearden. But the remaining three are directed by Alberto Cavalcanti, Robert Hamer, and Charles Crichton. This often happens to get things out there quickly, just out of availability, where you can't book someone for an extended period. Just as they would tend to get a whole variety of famous actors in for just one very short section. You can't book them for a 2-week span, but you can book them for 1 or 2 days just to get their filming done for their story. But it is a bit rarer to have different directors for each segment, although we will come across that when we do the Twilight Zone movie. Now that I'm just waiting to see if Fez has corrected me on what's in a gimlet. Anyway, the wraparound story concerns. I've immediately forgotten his name. Oh, dear. Hugh Granger, isn't it? No, Walter Craig. Walter Craig is our main guy. He's an architect who's called out to a delightful country house. It is absolutely stunning. It makes the film feel really cozy, even as it gets into very sinister vibes. He pulls up to the house. He looks a bit bemused, but goes in. And he announces to everyone in the assembled that actually he knows them. He's having deja vu. He's dreamt about this very moment. And they all find this a bit fantastical, and it's poo-pooed by a psychiatrist character. And
I love
this,
it.
yeah, it
Oh,
gives
sorry.
us
I was going to say I love the psychiatrist character in this because he's so stereotypically German, and like he constantly the glass is coming on, and then the glass is coming off, and then the glass is coming back on.
you
he
could
was the
totally
perfect
drink for
archetype, wasn't he?
every glass interaction.
Yeah,
Now you see, you
remi-
seem to be suffering some kind of disorder going on here.
what was what was that film that we covered here? It was when we were doing our 60s arc, and they had that like crazy like psychiatrist guy. Oh my god, what was the name of the film? It was where he was taking pictures of the women and
Eyes Without a Face.
Eyes Place. Yeah, he really
Yes.
reminded me of that guy just because of the accent and just sort of the sort of eccentric tone of which he was speaking to people.
Oh wait, do you mean taking the photos? Or-
Yeah, so the psychiatrist. Remember, he was chatting to the killer at one point, wasn't he? And because his dad was like a psychiatrist or something like that.
Yeah,
back in the-
sorry, that was
in the-
Peeping Tom.
Peeping Tom. That's it.
There we go.
Isn't that a Robin Williams film?
No, you're possibly thinking of Eyes Wide Shut. No, 1 Hour Photo, not Eyes Wide Shut.
I've not watched
Which-
any of these films. I'm sorry.
Ah, well, we covered 1 Hour Photo
We did.
quite a while back, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard that's a worthwhile watch.
it
Yes.
really is. It really is.
Definitely.
Lots to get the old noggin jogging.
Yeah, 1 Hour Photo is a fantastic film.
Really is, yeah. Anyway, our psychiatrist here is a heap of fun, and he is just shutting down any idea that this could have been a premonition. And this gives us our wraparound story. Everyone is in a battle with him to say, nonsense, here's my supernatural experience.
I did like that they all ganged up on him immediately.
That was
Well, he was
brilliant.
German.
No, I mean, it
It
makes
was-
sense. I understand it.
Yeah,
It was
I mean-
the fashion at the time.
Yeah, exactly. It was 1945. He was German. I mean, come on.
I mean, I think there might be a little bit of that in there. I think there might be, but we can't say for certain. It's not as much as I see in other films, but I think it's possibly just the idea of the psychiatrist is heavily influenced by Freud and Jung, and so he's sort of porting those German characteristics over. Anyway, that scenario where they're all flinging stories at him is great, but at the same time, Walter Craig is upping the ante, and it's not so much a dream he had about them, it's a nightmare. He remembers bits and pieces, he makes predictions that turn out to be correct, and he's convinced that it's all heading towards something horrible, something absolutely traumatic. And I think we might maybe leave the final revelation till the end. I think.
Yeah, that works
Sure.
by me.
Grand. And in terms of it, well, shall we talk about how they get into things? Will that work for you? Or would you like to do the stories one by one, and then we'll talk about the whole wraparound story?
I don't mind if we take it in order and just talk about the scenes and events as they arise in the film.
I'm
Okay,
done.
fantastic. Well, I think we've pretty much got this covered with the introduction. He comes in, he's pointing out that he knows everyone. Everyone present is quite fascinated by it. We've got a whole host of people. It's very genteel. It's very English, as I said. It's gorgeous. I mean, just look at this.
It felt like a classy dinner party. It gave me feelings of a long-lost era that I can no longer be part of, and it made me very sad. Made me very sad to know that I can never really take part in an event like this.
You do get this from watching the really old stuff. I'm with you. I
Everything's
mean,
so
even
classy in the
Twilight
film.
Zone. Yeah, there's a lovely bit where everyone's passing out cigarettes. And they're
Oh
just
yeah, my favorite
very
bit.
classy.
If only.
Yes, so we got everyone gathered here. Interestingly, Joan, the woman in the black dress there, sneaks her way into 3 sections, which is wonderful. So she has her own story that she tells. She's a guest in the story of the chap on the right there, on the very right edge.
Yeah, yeah.
And obviously she's in the wraparound, so she manages to get in quite a bit.
Is she a guest in the? Because he's the race driver, isn't he? He's the first story you see. Is she in that, or is it the woman who
Yeah,
shows
she's
up
his
later?
nurse.
Was it? Oh yes, yes. I think you're right. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't catch. I'm sorry. This is one of those films. I didn't catch anybody's names, so I apologize in advance for that.
Oh, don't worry. I never catch names.
That's all right then.
It's Same
We can
boat,
share
mate.
the shame.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if I've messed up here. It's saying
No. I
I think it's
you were
actually
on.
not the same woman in 3 of them. It's I've confused Joan and Joyce. And I'll be
Right.
honest. Oh, apologies, folks. Apologies. Anyway, hopefully it won't affect things too much. Anyway, so they're gathered, and as we said, it becomes a little bit of the challenge to present something to the psychiatrist. You know, he's immediately saying, "Oh, you know, you've probably seen me in the papers." And there's a really adorable bit where the younger girl, Sally, just says, "You probably saw me in the local paper. I was a bridesmaid." I just thought that was really adorable.
She was that stereotypical sort of ditzy woman that sort of Harry Enfield and chums sort of mocked, wasn't she? I mean, I love the shade they throw at her. It's brilliant.
Honestly, despite how ditzy and naive she seemed, I thought she was very sweet. I thought she was quite delightful. Is the thing, you know, you can throw all the shade that you want at her, but she just seems like she'd be a very nice person.
Yeah, agreed. She seemed very sweet, and it didn't faze her at all. It was almost like she didn't even notice what they were doing.
And in her own story, when we get to it, she displays some very motherly qualities and some very sort of matriarchal, very feminine qualities, which I thought made her just seem delightful.
Yeah, there's something about these scenes which you might say they feel like a bit of a pastiche now. And I almost wonder if the sort of genteelness is played up a little bit to help make the horror land.
I did find the contrast, especially really early on in the film, to what it gets to later on, where the end of this film shocked me with just how creepy some of the imagery was. I was very impressed. So that contrast really made it hit harder when you got to it.
Yeah. The one that stands out to me is when they all just sort of concur at once that they believe in his premonition. They're all just like, "Well, I do too. Yes, I also believe." And it's sort of a, well, jolly good. We all believe it, and it's really nice.
And that's all before his premonitions begin to come true as well. He just says it, and they're like, "Oh, sounds all right to me."
Yeah,
I know, right? If that was me, right, and I had this guy sitting in my living room, and he was like, "Oh, by the way, I've got this premonition. I'm going to murder you, batter your wife, and I don't know, probably do everything else." He convinces me. The last thing I'm going to do is let him sit there for the rest of the evening, and as the events start to unfold, I'll be like, that's great. Yeah, I believe you. Get out."
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. It's the fact that they immediately believe him, but then they all maintain the chipper attitude as they're going through all of their stories.
Yeah.
I mean, feel they are sort of doing it as though it's almost like a dinner party exercise or a dinner party entertainment to them.
Yes, although to be fair, like TCG says, if somebody, even without saying it was a premonition, if somebody just came into my home and told me they were going to murder me, I'd probably kick them out anyway. It doesn't need to be part of a premonition.
True. Yeah, the interplay of sort of comedy and dark subject matter is quite a tricky balance in here. They slide some disturbing stuff. Like his prediction about Sally is that he's going to hit her violently,
Oh,
and she's just sort of like, "Oh no!" And then
they cheated. They cheated with that prediction.
did they?
I think they really cheated.
Yes.
Well, there's this bit where her
this-
mum comes along and is amazing, and it's like Sally's like, "No, he says he's going to hit me violently," and the mother's like, "Well, he'll have to hit someone else, dear. We have to go."
Yeah.
I loved
great.
it. I think it's just charming. It's cozy. It's heartwarming.
And it was almost like her mother was sort of like you could see where the daughter got her sort of like character from, because her mother was equally as oblivious. Like if someone again, you know, she turned around and said, "Oh no, he's supposed to be beating me up later," and she completely brushed over it. Did not. Yes, Fez, it was in real life.
Oh. So the first story thrown out in support of our boy Walter. I am going to forget his name constantly. It's always going to happen. You know me. Protagonist. First story thrown up in favour of Walter is Hugh Granger's, and he is a racing. I've mangled that up. He races cars, and he's in a crash, and he ends up in a hospital. And it's a bit interesting seeing a hospital in the 1940s, isn't it?
Mm.
That
NHS
personalised
working,
service.
that is quite unusual. You're right.
I don't know if you've ever done it, Harry, but going back and watching the second Carry On movie, Carry On Nurse, and seeing very early NHS is quite an experience.
I will have to have that experience for the first time in that case. I don't know if this is sacrilegious or not. I have never, in fact, watched a Carry On film.
Do not worry about it. It's very interesting just for sort of slice of life details that aren't meant to be the point of the film, but you get fascinated. Like I get fascinated when you see shops in old films and the way they're laid out, or just
I mean, for me,
completely
even
different
just
styles of
going back,
life.
even just going back to a film like American Werewolf in London and seeing what London looked like in, I think it's 1980, it feels like a completely different world.
Oh, it does. It does. Yeah, that's part of the codes as well. Yes, in this story, our racing driver is in an accident, ends up in hospital with a nurse who he wins over by a little bit of casual sexual harassment. But it's 1940, so it's super chill.
I was cheering him on.
Yeah, I was thinking how much it would
was I.
be problematized today, but it's just adorable.
And it works. It literally, in the film, it works.
It totally works.
Yeah.
He's just like, yes, you should marry me. I love it.
In fact, this is something I see often in old-fashioned depictions of men in hospital being treated by nurses, and it's something like I've seen when he was in hospital. I've seen my granddad do. I've seen lots of older gentlemen do it in hospitals where they'll just hit on the nurses. I suppose it can get very boring just sat there all day. So why not give yourself a challenge?
And then there's the other kind of movies with patients and nurses, but we won't go into that.
This is a family-friendly stream,
Oh dear,
please.
oh dear.
Anyway, he has a premonition, and in a very Rene Magritte style moment, he wakes up, and although it's night in his room, outside it's bright day. And he looks out and sees a hearse driver, and it's this absolute meme right here. I love this guy.
Yeah, I said to you, this has got meme potential. Looking out the window, like all confused, looks down, zoom in. Only room for one more inside, sir.
Oh, it's classic. I will say I've seen so many people in nowadays when they watch these old horror films, and there's the snap zooms and the slow zooms. There's a lot of camera zooms in them, and they'll laugh at them because it can look a bit hokey in comparison to today's ultra streamlined CGI and whatnot. But I think it's got a charm to it, and it actually worked for me, despite how amusing it could be in the moment. this worked as a bit of a spook just because of how effectively it was built up, especially when you see him get out of the bed and there's that wonderful casting of the shadow against the blinds as it creeps up the wall. I thought that was very effective.
Yes, yes. They did a very good job of making it look like natural light. Like they gave you an explanation with the lamp in the bed for why the shadow was there. But very nicely done. And this premonition spooks him. And later, when he gets out of hospital, he's about to get onto a bus, and he sees a bus driver who looks just like this guy. He says exactly the same thing, and he's freaked out. He steps off, and the bus then crashes, and his life is spared. And he asks the psychiatrist, "How do you explain that?"
Well, I can explain it. It was clearly a model.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bus, sir. You've just put a model over the edge.
I'm afraid, yes.
That was one of the hokey parts for me, sadly, that it was so clearly just a little model set that was just careening off.
Yes. Yes, I'm afraid so. I mean, they're very quick with it. They don't dwell on it, but yes. Overall, what's your feeling? Oh, sorry, Marina. NHS is National Health Service. Us being British, it's we just say NHS. It's the main thing we do in this country now, isn't it?
It's our civic religion.
Yes.
Oh, it's Thursday, actually, guys. Pots and pans.
Pots and pans time.
Yeah.
There we go. I've done my bit.
Nice. So thoughts on this first one? TCG?
Yeah, I thought this was a strong start, actually, because it kind of sort of links into the main character's spiel with the whole premonition side of things. This for me was probably one of the strongest with maintaining the theme. As I say, there's some of the others a bit later on sort of went a bit of a different direction. But yeah, this was pretty good. I mean, yeah, and Harry's right. As funny as this particular bit was, it was quite creepy given what he is riding, which is, I believe it's like an old style hearse. Like a horse and carriage style hearse, and then just the whole like only room for one more inside. It was like, oh man, and the face he pulls as well is just freaky. And then the special effects were something. I am not a big CGI fan. If I will go practical effects every day, but they could have been a bit more practical to be honest.
Yeah, man, somebody did point out in the comments, Murgoot, British movie budgets. That's just how it goes, sadly, over on this aisle, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
sadly.
True. It's true. Yeah, I love this one. I think it's incredibly short and sweet. Just gets to the point, and we do see this guy again. And he's memorable enough to work when we see him later in the film.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. The next story I think is really interesting. Do either of you want to do the synopsis for Sally's story? I should mention actually, Sally, our younger slappee, the recipient of the slap. I don't know what we call her. Oh no, she's a slappee. She receives a slap.
Ah, yes.
If she knows what's good for her. Yes, her story. Does anyone feel like tackling this with a quick synopsis for anyone who didn't watch?
Yeah, I can wrap this one up, I think, quite quickly. So she talks about like a party that she's at, and it's like younger children and one lad around her age. They play like some sort of hide and seek game. She goes upstairs and hides behind the curtain, like behind these curtains, while all of the other like guests go searching for her, and the lad around her age finds her, and as they're hiding, he tells her a story about like the previous occupants, like the half sister had murdered the half brother. I don't think he gives any sort of specific names at that point,
No.
but he's doing this as well as a plot to like woo her. Like you can tell he's into her. Like he tries to make a few advances, she shies away. They then go find another hiding spot. She then sort of he then tries it on again. She sort of like wiggles away, then sort of hides. He leaves the room, and then she starts to go and explore. And then as she's exploring, she finds a little boy who's upstairs on his own, and he really likes her straight away, instantly. Like, yeah, you're the most amazing person ever. Oh my god, I love you. Oh my god. And then he talks about how his half sister hates him and how she wants him dead, and she doesn't really cotton on. Tucks him in, goes downstairs, and they're all like, "Oh my god, where have you been?" She was like, "Oh, there was a little boy upstairs," and they're like, "What? There was no little boy." It was like, "What was his name?" Gives the name, and she's like, "Oh my god, yeah, you know about the story then? What story? About the boy who got killed?" And she's like, "Oh my god, hold me! I'm not frightened. I'm not frightened. Oh, hold me!" Yeah, there you go.
A fair summary. A fair summary.
Fair representation.
I feel I should note. So Sally O'Hara is played by Sally Ann Howes, a bit of a British legend. People probably more likely to know her from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang than this, but she actually passed away last year, and I believe we actually commemorated her on screen.
Rest in peace to her.
Yeah, I mean, at a ripe old age, having been in a heck of a lot of films. I think
Who did she play in Chitty?
She was the character known as Truly Scrumptious.
No way.
I don't actually know Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I'm just thinking that's probably the
I've not watched it
generally
either.
best known. It's one of the gaps in mine. I've paused it on this frame just because I found this quite interesting. I hadn't noticed until this viewing, but that statue behind her seems a little relevant given the ghost that she meets later.
Yes, in the story that's told, didn't the brother chop off the sister's head or cut the neck or something?
No, other way around.
Other way around.
The
Bloody hell, yes.
Yeah, the sister kills the brother. So I thought this is kind of, maybe it's a memorial to him.
Perhaps.
Maybe.
I will say this one didn't work quite as well for me, just because I did know exactly where it was going the second that she ended up in a strange room behind a door that nobody had noticed for a while and suddenly ran into a crying boy. I did like that moment when she walks into the room and she can just hear the quiet sobbing, though, and approaching it. That felt quite ominous. But the scariest thing about this scene, this story for me, wasn't anything the characters did or said. It was the horrific demon doll that seemed to be in the background when she had the little boy on her lap and was trying to soothe him. There was I don't know if you can get an image up of it, but there's a horrifying doll in the background which just freaked me out a bit.
I don't remember seeing that.
Do you want to have a look for that, TCG? Because I can't actually get into my copy of the film at the moment where my mic is plugged in to the bit I need.
What I can do.
You look for a creepy doll. This is a simple story, but it's very obvious where it's going.
Yeah, it's effectively done. The narrative just didn't compel me as much as some of the others did.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's quite nasty what it's actually talking about here, but it's delivered in this very sort of chirpy, innocent way. If I were to try and make a massive reach, I'd probably try and say, well, it's sort of chirpy and overdone because it's being told by a teenager. But I'm not sure that would actually stand up. Would you buy that defense, Harry?
I don't know if there's any, because of how this film has a very sincere delivery in the way that it executes everything. I don't know if there's any reason to assume that when we're seeing these stories told in flashbacks that we have a case of unreliable narrator going on. I just assumed that when they're flashing these stories up, that all that we're seeing is just an accurate representation of actually what happened. And given the way that she behaves and everybody else behaves in the film, for the rest of it, for the most part, I think it's just keeping in with that tone, really, which, to be fair, is quite impressive given that they have different directors for all of these scenes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It feels certainly a lot more unrealistic, a lot less grounded than some of the other stuff, which I suppose you probably could attribute that to a different director. So this would be the one directed by Alberto Cavalcanti.
Is he known for anything else?
I'll have a little look. You notice I didn't even see his full name, actually. He's just credited as Cavalcanti in the film. Okay,
I did see someone in the comments pointing out that apparently this story is based on an actual true crime, the murder of Francis Savile Kent by, his older half-sister Constance in 1860.
On it.
Go on, TCG. Real versus real. Let's go. Let's go.
I think it's not the closest I could find wasn't necessarily like a doll, but it was like something on the wall.
Perhaps it's part of the decoration, but you know what I mean when you see it. The second you see it, it's awful. I couldn't take my eyes off of that.
Okay,
come on, bring it up.
Yeah, I will share that now. That's
what the view is in anticipation.
Yeah, gosh, look at that. That's a bit nightmarish, isn't it?
I think perhaps that's supposed to be a representation of Constance or something, because it is just horrifying.
The older sister in the background looking creepy, watching out.
Oh,
yeah, could be.
Yeah, that's what elevated this one a bit, just because that was just so subtly there in the background. I didn't even realize it was subtle enough that either of you would have missed it. But for me, it was so clear because I was watching and my eyes just drifted to because it looks as though it looks as though that figure is just staring straight into the camera. It's staring straight at the viewer.
Yeah. I mean, it won't be the only creepy doll-like figure that we see in this film.
Not.
There's also something weirdly, I want to say, spiritual about that image.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at the hair around, it almost looks like some sort of dark aura, as opposed to hair.
Yeah, maybe this is going to be me being a bit too young millennial Gen Z. But have any of you heard about the Mandela Catalog series of games and YouTube videos?
No, you're going to have to fill me in.
Well, they're VHS-style horrors where it's supposed to be seemingly around this evil sect of Christianity that are worshipping a fallen angel, and it's honestly done in quite a well-done, creepy way. And there's recurring imagery throughout that series of this fallen angel, which
I am aware of that.
Reminds me a lot of that.
Huh.
You're right there, TCG. You sounded like you were going to chip in there.
No, I was just going to say I think I do recall that, actually.
I think I've got to look this up. I'm going to need links, Harry. I'm going to need them after this.
I'll see if I can find something right now as we speak. Carry on.
Go for it. Yeah. I mean, I don't have. There's kind of an overall psychological interpretation I want to do of the film, and I'll do it at the end, but because we need to cover all the stories first for it to make sense. But I do find that this story is a bit of it's the weak element in my interpretation. I enjoy it. I think it's charming. I will say charming about 500 times in this stream, because I think it's the best explanation, best description of Dead of Night. Okay, this is getting some appreciation. I think you're onto a good thing here. I'm going to have to check that out.
I watch far too many YouTube Let's Plays for my own good when I'm just trying to pass the time.
No,
if you go to that link I've just sent through to you in the chat, the first image that comes up on that wiki is the one that I was thinking of, the kind of dark in the shadows angel. It's supposed to be the Archangel Gabriel, apparently. I didn't even realize that.
Okay, so you want me to look up the first?
Man.
Oh, hello.
It's
Yes.
too dark for me here to be looking at these images.
Yeah, they're really. Once again, the line between horror and comedy is often straddled. Is a very fine line, because some of those images.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
I just looked at the next one. Jesus Christ!
Yeah, they can
Like-
be. I didn't realize
What?
you'd get that reaction from it. It can look silly, but obviously you're in the environment where it must just like not be very nice for you.
Like horror games. I don't like horror.
Have you ever played PT? I've still got that on my PS4. And
Yes,
that's horrifying. I will still boot it up every so often, and it just I can only last about 10 minutes on it.
I've talked about it before on the channel. I played it with my wife, and we had to resort to a walkthrough in the end anyway because I was getting screwed. But I got to a point where I was trying to force the controller into her hand and be like, "Look, finish this. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it." And she's like,
"You can
"No,
wear the
come
pants. It's all right. I'll do the washing
yeah,
up. I promise."
yeah, exactly. I was like, "Yeah, I'll be a good boy. I'll make the beds. I'll do it. Please just do it." She's like, "No, you finish it." I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't want to do it." I mean, for those in the know, I did a walkthrough of Soma on my second channel. Yeah, that was
That is
traumatic.
great viewing.
It's traumatic.
I'll have to check that out.
Oh, good.
Oh
good.
god, yeah. If you fancy a laugh.
Yeah. So, anything else on? Oh, the other thing with Sally's thing is she tells her story. The psychiatrist says it's nonsense. He gives a good explanation, and it's just funny him shooting her down. But then she's called away to go. Oh, no, actually, I think it's a test. Walter believes she's going to leave, and then they all propose, well, to prove your premonition wrong, to break this curse that you're so scared of, we'll simply have Sally stay around for tea. And then her mum comes and collects her, and it's sort of, it's lovely.
Is it before or after this that the race driver's wife shows up, the former nurse from the previous, from the race driving, from the first story? Because I think that's the first premonition he gives. He says a penniless brunette is going to show up, and I think that's one of the reasons they kind of have a bit of skepticism.
Yes.
Because she shows up and she's not penniless.
Yeah. Although no, she does, because she's like, "Oh, pay for my taxi, dear. I've used up the last of my money."
Oh yeah, actually,
and they're
you're right.
Yeah.
And they're like, see, the penniless brunette.
And they do the little quibble on it. They're like, "Oh, I don't know." And I really liked his. I like his description of it, the dream, because the obvious challenge is, well, tell us exactly what will happen. And he says, "No, I have these little fragments of it," which I think is very true to how deja vu feels.
I think he gives a really nice description of what it's like to try and remember a dream. You're walking through, what is it, a dark forest at night, and it's raining, and every so often lightning strikes and illuminates your vision, and then it's gone again.
That's it.
That was a very nice little speech.
Yeah.
I really liked, despite how over the top and funny some of the acting could be, all very chirpy and whatnot, when he needed to bring it, he really did get me into the creep zone.
Yeah, I think there's a very nice, tense dynamic in this, where I think as the audience, we do want the psychiatrist to be wrong. He's out of touch. He's spoiling the fun. He's German. We want to prove him wrong. We don't want the art and wonder of life stripped out.
Yeah, that was a theme running throughout because of it was running all the way through the framing story, was this idea of the your gut instinct, your human natural inclinations towards the supernatural and the spiritual versus the cold hard scientific rationality. And I was interested to see which one would win out, because despite the fact that everybody else disagreed with him, it was whether they were going to be able to win over the Doctor.
Exactly. At the same time, we're team everyone but the Doctor, but we're also being told that if the Doctor's wrong, then something horrible is on its way. And that is a lovely dynamic. We're sort of cheering on the horror. It's a wonderful little vibe in this.
Yeah, there's that nice dichotomy. You want them to be right, but you can feel the sense of dread building every time you go back to the framing device, just because you can feel it getting closer and closer to where this disaster is going to happen.
Yeah.
Exactly. We move on to a more intense story after this, and I do feel Dead of Night is trying to almost lighten things up a little bit. Like it'll give us a scary story and then something a bit lighter, then it'll go a bit dark and then it'll go a bit lighter. So we've got our more comedy story after this. Whereas this one, a bit grim. This is The Haunted Mirror, directed by Robert Hamer. Some interesting factors in this. Harry, would you like to do the synopsis for this one?
Yes, this was alongside perhaps the last story they tell. This might have been my favourite one because there is an eerie simplicity to it, which really was effective for me. So in this one, we've got this chap here whose name I've completely forgotten. Apologies. He is the primary character, but this story is being told to us by, what's her name, Joyce or Joan, one of the women who are at the party.
Let's see. He is Peter Cortland. His wife is Joan Cortland, played by the brilliantly named Googie Withers.
Oh, why don't we have more names like that in England again? Honestly, we lost something when we stopped calling people Googie. But yes, in that case, yes, Joan is telling the story. She is married to this man, Peter. As a little treat, she has decided to get him this lovely mirror that we see in the image. He's initially delighted by it. He puts it up. He gets it up in his bedroom. They're all very happy, except he begins to notice something. At first, it's only small. They're both looking in the mirror at the same time, and he thinks he notices something in the background, and he thinks nothing of it. It must have just been a trick of the eye. And then progressively, as time goes on, Joan begins to notice that Peter is acting erratically in the lead up to their wedding. And he eventually decides to try and call the wedding off for one reason. And it's this wonderful and very effective scene where we see him. He's trying to dress up in a suit and a tie, and he notices his reflection looks like this. Except there's one problem, which is that reflection we see in the mirror is not the room that he is standing in. It is showing the wrong reflection, and he becomes fixated by it at points and is aware of a malignant presence on the other side, which might be calling him or at least influencing him. This begins to snowball until eventually she thinks he's beginning to, eventually she manages to, right before the wedding, get him to unsee the image. She holds his hand, and she because she wants to be married, she holds his hand and she gets him to look into the mirror with her, and she manages to break the illusion for a moment, or at least she thinks she does. And then after they're married, it starts to affect him again, and she comes back from a trip where she's gone to see where she got the mirror from, if there was any story about it. It turns out the mirror had been owned by a man who became, I think he was a man of spirits, who raced horses, a man of action, who ended up in a horse accident that left him paralyzed or partially paralyzed, and he ends up in bed 24/7. He can only get out a little bit, and his wife, he begins to suspect that she's cheating with a number of men, and it ends up driving him to the point where he strangles her out of a fit of jealous rage, at which point, when she finds that out, she finds out that this, as I say, mirror came from that bedroom. The shop she got it through has also got the panelled walls, the four-poster bed, etc. there. So she goes home to try and tell him, except when she gets back, he has already been gripped by the spirit, which has influenced him to also go into a fit of jealous rage because there's a mutual friend of theirs called Guy, who he is suddenly suspecting she's been having an affair with, and that's why she was away for the weekend. He eventually tries to strangle her, but right before he's able to kill her, she smashes the mirror, breaking the curse, and he comes back to his senses. And I think that's the end of the story. And I really did like this one. Just the idea that you've got a mirror, because we all have mirrors, especially in the bedroom. It's a very common thing that you find across across the world. You'll have a mirror in the bedroom for obvious reasons. The idea that every time you look over to the mirror, it's showing you the wrong thing, this deceit, this thing that we don't encounter in reality, but it's so simple. It's so simple and effective and creepy, and the fact that it's influencing him really worked for me. This gave me a good tense knot in my stomach at times, especially this does an old-fashioned thing which I really like, that modern films tend not to do as much, because they go straight for the jump scares, which is, instead of just cutting to the thing that you're supposed to be scared of, it lingers for a moment. There's the reaction shot on the face of the characters, so you get anticipation by seeing how worried or concerned they are. And there's a few sequences in this story where it does that, where he'll just be pottering about his bedroom, he'll putting his suit on, he'll be absent-minded, turn, and all of a sudden his face drops. It all changes, and it cuts to the mirror, and you understand what's going on.
Yeah,
it's excellent. I really liked this one.
This was a really strong episode. And Horrorshow, I don't know if did this remind you of Oculus?
Massively.
Yeah,
I got Oculus feelings. Yeah,
big time.
We've got so many cases where you do a little thing of something in the reflection is a little bit off. It moves differently to you. It's been done for great comedy effect in Evil Dead. It's been done for good creeps of just things being slightly off, slightly out of sync in Oculus. It's a classic scare, and this really delves into it. This really explores the potential and just makes it much more unnerving. The fact that they linger on it.
Yeah, what I really liked about it though was the fact that rather than it being a different person that he was seeing, or like you say, where it was his movements were out of sync with the reflection, it was the background environment. You know, I don't think I've seen anything like that before. Done with sort of mirror horror.
Yeah, it's also it's not obvious. It's not obvious where things are going. Like, if you see your reflection is wrong, your reflection is moving, it's a target. It's almost like it's something you can project a personality onto. What do you do when the room is wrong?
Exactly.
You know something's deeply uncanny and unsettling, but what do you do with that?
I was half expecting at some point maybe there's a door in the background, and for someone to come through the door and hit somebody in the reflection be attacking him that he can't see in reality. But the fact that it didn't do that kept me more on edge, because I was expecting it.
Yeah, it's much more obscure. You can't tell where it's going, and that sets you off. All you see is he is becoming genuinely unpleasant to her. I think you're also to his wife, but sorry, fiance. Well, you also see, I think, that you're sympathetic to him a lot at first, I think, which really helps. He's not just a straight bad guy.
The whole way through. What was happening to him wasn't his fault.
Exactly. Yeah, same here. I was exactly the same. I was sympathetic throughout.
Yeah. There are...
When he became influenced by it and started to strangle her, I wasn't hoping that she would kill him to try and get him to stop. I was hoping that she would do exactly what she would do, so that it would free both of them of it.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I don't want to upset Jennifer Lawrence, but I would point out that, you know, in case anyone thinks that it was so oppressive in these films, it is his wife who completely saves the day.
Patriarchy in action.
There you go.
I know these terrible
what a woman will do for a well-to-do man.
Something I found really interesting here is the complete physiognomy check you can do on the antique seller.
He is a bit of a schemer, isn't he?
I was wondering about that, because he doesn't seem awful. He's helpful, but they've cast someone who I'm not trying to be mean. He's done very classily, but I think visually all the signs are there that there's something a bit up.
He seems like the sort of guy who would sell you a monkey's paw.
Precisely. He kind of relishes the evil details.
See, the problem was you had the doll set to evil instead of good.
Yeah. And also, I think you're meant to be sort of against the husband originally. Sorry, the original owner of the mirror, and think that he's completely paranoid about his wife, and you've got that sense of tragedy that he kills her out of paranoia. But then you do later get that shot of the wife that completely changes it. I don't know if you guys caught that.
No.
No, I must have missed this.
Oh,
Yeah.
for God's sake.
I'm sorry. I'm
I
sorry.
don't
Thought that in the
understand.
background, you know.
What is the story behind this image? I don't understand.
Do you
Should
not
I-
know?
No.
Do you want to say it? Tell him, or should I?
She is a police officer who is really into teamwork. She
There was a lot
worked
of
several
trust
of her
building
team.
exercises going on.
Yeah. I'd look that up in your own time. Sorry, cheap joke,
Ugh.
folks. I couldn't resist it.
Have a link then. Someone send me a link.
You know that in real life, her husband's decided to stay with her. Impressive levels of cuckoldery going on.
Oh yeah. No, when I say link, I mean link to the story, not link. If there's any. No, not link.
Not
I don't want
hooking me
that.
up with her. Oh dear. Oh, talk about being on the
Oh,
beat.
okay.
She's been
I
around
had
the
to-
block many a time.
I had to ask.
Oh dear. Sorry, folks. Sorry. Yeah, I like that she takes the initiative here and she's going. I think the idea of the slightly, I don't want to say deformed, I'm gonna say odd looking. His physiognomy is meant to set you on edge. It's the idea that she's going into a kind of dangerous place to try and work it out.
Hang on. So what you're saying is that he looks like someone who'd be ringing the bells of Notre Dame. Yes?
100%. Like there's some.
Cool.
The
Yeah.
lesson is always never trust people who look like Iago.
Ed Dutton has entered the chat. All right. Yeah. I mean that. Oh gosh, I won't go down that line, but that is a very interesting topic in horror films. But yes, she comes back to him, as you say, as you summarize so well. It's kind of the classic device here. He's seeing her, strangling her in the mirror, but it's simply breaking the mirror, breaks its hold. And I found it so touching that she actually goes straight to him afterwards to comfort him.
Yeah, once again, the women in this film, when they're portrayed positively, are portrayed as very nurturing, very kind, in a very wholesome manner, in a way that isn't necessarily in line with today's girl boss aesthetic, but made her far more endearing as a character, because I could see that she had nothing but good intentions. These were two people who care about each other, who just happened to be in a horrible situation outside of either of their control.
Yeah. I love this
also,
one. It's sorry, TCG.
I know. I was
go
to say
ahead.
also I like the bit when he was sort of opening up to her about what he was going through, and then he was like, "Look, I think we're going to have to postpone the wedding," and she was like, "Oh, nonsense! Let's get married and then we can talk about divorce later." That's like, brilliant. Oh,
There are lovely little comic touches throughout this, and I often think it's meant to sort of lighten the load. Now, any people watching this who've been with the channel a long time, you will be familiar with where we were in terms of film censorship at this point. But in case people want a quick refresher, at this point, every movie released in a British cinema needed to be accessible to everyone. There was no adult films, there was no children's films. There was films with the Universal certificate and films with the adult certificate. But that was adult themed, more suitable for adults. People would still be able to bring children in, just at the risk of boring them. So I suspect little comic touches like this were the kind of typical move to slightly lighten a film and make it a bit more palatable. We are, of course, in 1945, 6 years off getting the first X certificate, which is the first time that British cinemas made a very hard line of no kids allowed. So a minor bit of BBFC history for you there.
Which was that first X film? Just out of curiosity.
Ooh, I'm not. Gosh, I do have my notes on that somewhere.
Don't want to derail it. I just thought I'd ask.
Oh no, I was looking it up the other day, and I tried to get an image of it. I'm good. This is killing me. I know it's not Fall of the House of Usher. It was nonsense. No. Sorry. I can't find it. If I No, I'm gonna have to leave it actually, because I'll just go down a well. But from 1951, you start getting them, and they kind of celebrated it. It was a bit of a mark of pride. So the Quatermass experiment just kicked the EOF experiment to make a big thing of, hey, look, we got an X certificate. Sorry, I can't find that for you. I've actually, it's in another folder where I've been redoing the BBFC history stuff, and I have the first one, but it's going to be a pain for me to find it now. Okay. So any sort of closing thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this one was a personal favourite of mine.
Nice.
Yeah. Either
really
this
like
one or
this
the
one.
last one for me.
It's just so intense.
Oh, the last one. Yeah. Okay.
It's just so intense.
Second favourite.
I'll move us to it fairly swiftly with the quick detour. I've only got the one screenshot for this because I think it's, it's a bit of fluff,
It's a bit of fun. I would have been annoyed by it were it not actually just a very funny short.
Yeah, it doesn't take too long. It lightens the tone, and as I've said, this film sort of deliberately gives you a lighter horror in between the heavier stuff, and the last one is much longer. It's much more intense. It goes to a very dark, vulnerable place. So this one lightens tone, and there's something quite weird about this, with a Hitchcock connection.
Yeah, I read this before you say about that. I have just thought actually there is, even in context of the framing device, I do think this story is. I think the owner of the house that they're all attending the party at, he just decides to throw in some nonsense story that it's implied he's making up on the spot to lighten the tone for everybody else.
Yes.
Well, yeah, this one threw me because it wasn't a personal story. It was secondhand information, and he was only really there for in this particular story. He was only there for like one scene. So yeah,
likelihood is he's just making it up anyway. So maybe he'd watch that Hitchcock film.
Yeah, he's there just to sort of having. I think he is having a bit of fun with the psychiatrist. I think they have broken out the schnapps at this point, if I recall.
Well, that makes sense.
I love how excited he is about the schnapps. Anyway, this is a very simple story. It's two golfers fall in love with the same woman. She falls in love with both of them, and because neither of them's name is Bankman-Fried, they decide that only one of them can be with her. And they decide to settle it not via an Eiffel Tower maneuver, but via a game of golf.
I thought this was a family-friendly stream. Goodness gracious.
Sorry, what? You probably misheard me. Anyway, they settle it over a game of golf. The younger man on the left loses due to the man on the right cheating. He walks into the lake and drowns, but then comes back a year later to haunt his former friend. He has to stay within 6 feet of him at all times, which rather scuppers the marriage plans. And you get some just delightful stuff of your man trying to work around the haunting. It's very sort of genteel comedy about him not wanting to kiss his wife with the ghost there, and giving her a really boring tour of all his golf trophies. I absolutely loved that.
And the ghost is egging him on the whole time as well. He's, go on then. Go on, get on with it.
That's fantastic. When the wife is trying to, take him to the marital bed for the first time, and he's just trying to get out of it. It's, I mean, I just want to say it's just incredibly British.
Very much so, especially how apparently to vanish if you're a ghost, you need to do a very silly little dance with a lot of strange hand gesturing all over the place that he just forgets for no reason.
Classic conceit, yes. His friend can't remember the vanishing procedure, which, looks like a very weird wibbling hands. And then
it was very Blackadder.
Very Blackadder. I think that's a very good description of it. And then trying to encourage him to try something else. The older man, the now husband, accidentally successfully performs a vanishing maneuver and disappears, leading to his former friend making a terrible, terrible pun, which I think possibly hasn't exactly survived modernizing, because I don't think it lands as well.
Perhaps I didn't catch it. Perhaps you're right about the modernizing, because I didn't catch whatever pun it was at the end. What was it?
He says, now do I make passes or make passes? Now, I think we know make a pass at someone, but I'm not sure what the original idea of the other idea of making passes would be. I don't know what the other meaning is. Is it keep trying, keep making more attempts at vanishing?
I think he meant make babies.
Well, I think definitely
I feel like he meant,
the second meaning is, but I just don't know what the first is.
I think we have to acknowledge the fact that only the other golfer could see this man. So essentially, what he was essentially what he was doing at the end of this film was like, yeah, I'm just going to sexually assault this woman, ghost style.
Well, she was up for it in life.
It's much less romantic when you put it like that.
I mean, but he knew the rules. He knew what he was doing.
There are lots of light touch in this. There is a weird touch in this I have to mention. I noticed it's on the Wikipedia as well, but this really threw me off when I watched. I think, is it 1929? Let's have a look. Let's confirm it. No, sorry, 1938. The 1938 version of The Lady Vanishes by Alfred Hitchcock. And these guys are in it. They were a double act of the time. In The Lady Vanishes, they're going under the double act name Charters and Caldecott. Here, they're effectively doing the same thing, and they went on to do it in a bunch of other movies. So audiences at the time, I think, would have been very familiar with these guys. It would have been the equivalent of seeing, Ricky Gervais and Carl Pilkington turn up, or for those of the 80s, maybe Little and Large or Cannon and Ball, or Paul and Barry Chuckle in the film. You'd know they're there as a duo and have a lot of sort of cultural weight to it. We have an explanation from Waifu.
Yeah, that's the kind of vibe that I got from it as well. Just that he was kind of saying, well, actually, what I got was he was asking himself, should I make passes? And then the second time he asked it, he was just confirming, yes, I'm going to go for it.
Armstrong and Miller, absolutely, yes. Or Mitchell and Webb turning up.
I can't believe you didn't say Dick and Dom.
Oh. Apologies.
Not Ant and Dec either.
Oh yeah, Ant and Dec.
Please,
Vegeta and Nappa.
Hang on, what?
Perhaps
this is too zoomer for me, Harry. Too zoomer. Anyway, it's interesting because just in the Hitchcock one, these guys are using pistols. They're murking folks out in the woods. It's quite weird. I mean, they've still got a sort of jolly, merry gentleman attitude while they do it, but they are shooting people. It's it's a little curiosity of this film.
Well, supposedly, I saw on the IMDb trivia, supposedly they showed up in like 4 or 5 other films at the same time, around this time as well. So perhaps it was just that they would just get hired on as a double act and then just, here's the script, do your thing. Didn't really matter what characters they were playing as long as they were a double act of characters in the film.
I think so. Yeah, hired for a little bit of meme value at the time. I mean, I find it a light, pleasant tale, but I don't have all that much to say about it.
I don't either. I don't understand. I felt I know it was funny and I know it was a bit more lighthearted, but given the previous stories that we had and the tone that the film was trying to set up beforehand, this particular one felt quite jarring for me. Doesn't mean to say I didn't like it, but it's just it then goes right back into it after this, and I'm just like,
Yeah, at first it threw me for a loop for a moment, because especially when it got to the point where he's cheated at the game of golf and his friend just turns around without saying a word, walks straight into the water, and they stand there and watch him without doing anything to try and stop him. I for a moment, I was thrown. I was like, has the quality of horror just vanished all of a sudden? What's going on? And then after a moment, I thought, I realized, it's supposed to be a comedy. Oh, okay. So I think it'll hit that just walking into the water will probably hit better the second time through, because it just threw me the first time. But I appreciate this for what it was. The fact that it was as funny as it was is what saved it from just being a complete waste of time.
Yeah, it was a good piece. It just I don't think it fit in this. There was also another duo that you overlooked as well, Horrorshow. Harry and Connor.
Oh, of course.
What about Harry and Callum?
Yeah, Harry and
He's
Callum.
a lot smaller than Connor is. Callum's a Diddy boy. Also, I've just noticed a Mr. Ben Taylor in the chat, an old friend of mine from university, who would, of course, be very annoyed if I didn't say hello. A shout out to Ben Taylor, who's currently on the Channel Isles, presumably having much nicer weather than we all are.
Hello, Ben Taylor. Welcome to the stream. We're discussing a movie from 1945. I hope you enjoy it. But back to how short Callum is. This is important.
He's microscopic, really. What you don't realise is that we've got the camera zoomed in very tight whenever he's on screen. Otherwise, he'd just barely be visible at all.
The rumour is that Carl hired him to make Carl look taller. Is this true?
I wouldn't be shocked. Honestly, Josh is quite tall. Connor's quite tall. Our editor is quite tall. But when I first joined, it was just Josh and Rory, and I'm taller than both of them as well. So I thought I was in some kind of hobbit hole when I first entered there, and I was the Gandalf stooping through the door. Because the problem is, whenever I was to see anybody at work, I would go up to say hello to them, and if from a distance they'd be small, and I'd get closer and closer and closer, but they wouldn't get any bigger. Was the problem?
It's like that magic door in Willy Wonka.
Yeah, although to be fair, I do have a tendency of making friends with very short people, so perhaps it's something on my part. Perhaps I know I'm already big, but I just need to exaggerate my dominance.
How tall are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 6'3".
I see. My best mate's 6'4". My son,
very impressive.
My son is 6'7".
Really?
I'm like, wow. Yeah, I'm like 5'9".
That's admirable. That's admirable, because honestly, I think 6'3", 6'4" is about as tall as you can get before it starts to cause physical issues. So I'm glad to be the height that I am, because I can still tower over 99% of people.
And he's going to be typing post physique.
Not at the moment. Give me a few more months, okay? I'm working on it.
I'm sure.
All right, I'll move us on into more decent territory, because I think this is a light, breezy story. We have fun. We go into just very dark areas from here on out, folks.
Easily the most horrifying story. Yes.
They saved the grimmest till last. Now, would either of you like to do the summary for this one?
I mean, TCG's got it in his picture, so he's got to do it.
So it's the psychiatrist's turn now to tell a freaky story, but he's like, "Oh, it's not one that I've experienced, but it's a case that I've done," and he talks about this. I'm assuming it's just the shooting, isn't it, of this ventriloquist on the right. So yeah, he goes to like a police station to do a interrogation or an interview with the man on the left, as he had shot, like, I want to say like a rival ventriloquist.
Yeah.
And the guy doesn't. So that ends quickly. So he gets like the testimony of the other guy, and the story essentially is the testimony being read out. But yeah, so it starts off in Paris, and this guy on the left's giving a performance with his ventriloquist dummy. But there's something not quite right, because the ventriloquist dummy almost has a mind of its own, and when he sees the guy on the right, he becomes quite interested in him, so much so that he's trying to sack off the guy on the left and essentially go off with the guy on the right. The guy on the left doesn't like this and takes personal offense to it, and actually slaps the dummy at one point. Anyway,
If I
the show
can
ends.
interrupt you there. Actually,
Yep.
I'm feeling with this one, because it's a trickier story, maybe we'll sort of talk our way through it. But,
Yeah.
because it's probably a bit of a nightmare to do the synopsis for this one. I was going to say, him slapping the dummy is one of those really weird, really shocking moments. How did you feel about that one?
It was, well, the thing is, I felt quite I wasn't shocked by it, but I was sort of taken aback by the crowd's reaction to it. Like, they actually thought it was like him slapping an actual child, you know?
It's a really uneasy moment, because it's an extreme reaction, but he slapped a dummy, so I mean, how much harm is done? It's
Getting Brian
there's a lot of
vibes.
tension in there. It gets a reaction from you, and then you're sort of wondering, hang on, why did I feel that? How about you, Harriet? How did you feel about this moment when he slaps Hugo?
What, me? Yeah, I thought it was very interesting, because it felt, like you say, it felt very tense, because he's in front of the audience who are all under the assumption that this is just a performance. It might even be part of his show. Oh, isn't it funny that the two of them get into arguments, and he gives him a little smack around the face. But because of the context, you already have the framing device that this is the Doctor and something bad has happened involving these two, involving this. You begin to understand that there is possibly something else going on, and that the ventriloquist himself is trapped in this situation because he's in front of the audience. He doesn't want to come across like a fool, but also that Hugo is messing with him. And it does a good job of drawing the line, making it difficult to really tell if he has just gone crazy and is behaving like this because Hugo has become like some detached part of his mind, or if Hugo really does have a life of his own. Slapping him, that on its own wasn't the big thing for me. It was just the whole scene and the tension that it built up was very good.
You know, it's interesting that you say that the ventriloquist was trapped, because I felt like it was the other way round.
Oh, I felt like Hugo. I felt that Hugo was completely the malignant, dominating force of the two of them.
But throughout the whole act, it was Hugo, the doll that wanted to get away from the man. The other guy was completely obsessive over Hugo. You know, he makes it very clear he doesn't, because when the guy meets Hugo backstage, the actual actor or the performer doesn't actually know why he's there. You know, he but yeah, he doesn't really as to why the guy is there. And then when he sort of picks up the doll, doesn't he? And he's like, no, I don't like anyone touching him. And you know, as it gets on later, as the story goes develops later on, you know, he really sort of exhibits heightened anxiety when the doll's not around.
Mm.
It becomes very possessive. It feels like Hugo resents the performer because he doesn't want to be with him anymore, and the performer was like, no, 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 you are mine, you're my possession, you stay with me, we have to be together. This felt to me like a story of of like an unhealthy obsession, but it was sort of inverted. So you had Hugo. Normally in these sorts of stories, the doll would be the malignant one, like you said, but I felt like it was actually the performer who was sort of almost exhibiting what you could sort of say would be some sort of like toxic behavior in that
Oh
sort
yeah,
of
that
aspect. Don't get me wrong, Hugo was the scene in the bar when he just slacks off those women.
was pretty based.
Oh, he was great. He was patrolling thoughts left and right. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like, you've been rude to the women. What women? I don't see any women around here.
Chad moves. No, I definitely felt that sense of Hugo was being trapped by the ventriloquist as it went along. That developed, but more in that initial scene because of the fact he's in the middle of the performance and Hugo has just decided that he does not want to cooperate and is behaving in a way where he's obviously more interested in what this other ventriloquist could do for him as far as his career goes. That in that scene, I felt for the ventriloquist, but as it went on, of course, he seemed more and more possessive. He seemed crazy, but at the same time, I think there is enough shown to suggest that this is supernatural, like when the other ventriloquist comes into his room and Hugo's sat in the corner in the dark and says something to him, and he's like, for a second there, I thought the Hugo was talking to me by himself. There's that, and then the fact that later on in the story he's able to switch rooms seemingly without the help of the ventriloquist suggests to me, listen, he's a creepy doll, and he seems to have a mind of his own. I'm never going to consider this the good guy. That's just how it goes.
Okay. Well, it's the uncanny valleyness of it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a creepy doll who deserves smashing.
Well, lucky for you.
Yes, my dreams came true.
Yeah,
this was a happy ending.
That's interesting to hear. This is, unsurprisingly for the story told by the psychiatrist, this has the most sort of psychological imagery in it. It's obviously no accident here. Hugo's in a little picture on the frame, and our man is leaning against the mirror. We've got two versions of himself, like a split personality, one of which is more aligned with Hugo. This is classic cinema imagery. No one's going to be surprised by this. But
no.
The reading of this, there are a few ways you can take it. Like Hugo being a sort of rampant jealous id, if we're using a bit of a Freudian construct there, that Hugo is just out of control once, and just, well, you can take it in a number of ways. I mean, one of which you can read this as effectively Hugo's acting out because the ventriloquist is terrified of his rival, jealous of his rival. Or there is also, and it has been a long time since I've done this, guys, so, I'm not obsessed or anything, but there is kind of a gay reading you can
read. Here we go.
So
here we go.
I'm just saying, you can... Michael Redgrave plays a ventriloquist as very effete. There's a very feminine manner to him. And Hugo wants to be with the other guy. If Hugo's a sort of side of his desires he can't control, that's interesting. He's getting all drunk and then Hugo ends up in the guy's bedroom. It's a little interesting. It's just a little interesting.
What's the gay reading of the golf story? They are playing with balls. I'm sure there is one.
No, just in this one, I think.
Oh, right, okay.
You can read it as professional insecurity, but I don't know. I feel like there's something potentially in that.
See, my reading was kind of the more classic an artist becoming so obsessed within his craft that it begins to reflect into him and take over him, and he begins to lose himself to part of that craft. Whereas in this, you could almost say that the craft itself, having a life of its own, yearns to go places that it can't go with him, which is what leads him down the path of self-destruction that he ends up going down. And like you say, the jealousy, the idea that somebody is out there in a craft that you have dedicated your entire life to, who could potentially be better. And it's not just you thinking that, it's even the very puppet, the things that you are using to develop and live in the world, the thing you've dedicated your life to, agrees. It's like, I, as a guitarist, can sympathize highly with that, because I've put a lot of my time in my life into learning how to play guitar and do some very fancy techniques. But then I can just flip onto Instagram, for instance, and see 12-year-olds playing 10 times as good as I ever could, no matter how much practice I put in, on an objective level. So even then, it's one of those things that does make you jealous, makes you want to just put your instrument down and give up altogether. So I kind of got that reading from it.
Yeah,
That really strikes a chord.
yeah.
Was it was it Bob Dylan who heard one of his songs played by Jimi Hendrix and then effectively retired it, saying, no, it's his now?
All Along the Watchtower, I think so. I wouldn't be surprised. I know that, interestingly, kind of the inverse of that, Nine Inch Nails song Hurt, the Johnny Cash version, Trent Reznor really didn't like at first. He thought it was a bit of a rubbish reimagining, but after Cash died, I think is when he said, actually, I can recognize in hindsight that this is the better version of the song, even though I wrote it.
The thing I love so much about this one is that it steps over some of the difficulties you have with this story. I think Murgoot Up Thread, yes, it was Murgoot, yeah, very rightfully says that this is kind of a classic story. It appears all over the place. And it's turned up in cinema many a time. It continues to turn up. The spooky doll story. I could go over to my bookshelf and get my, I think it's late 1800s copy of Algernon Blackwood's Tales of the... Is it Uncanny? I can't read it. It's very faded because it's from the late 1800s. And there's a story about a spooky doll in that. And when you tell the spooky doll story, you are kind of just on a path to one of two outcomes, which is someone is imagining the doll is real, is alive, or the doll is actually alive. And it can become a bit wearying because it's going to go one of those two ways and you're just basically waiting for the answer. And you could say that's a very reductive way of looking at it that could be applied to other stories. And that's very true. That's fair. But in the sense of, in the case of the spooky doll story, it feels like a very stark binary choice there. And this doesn't go and answer it. It steps over that. It keeps it ambiguous. It keeps it vague. And it gets very effective by just pushing you into really uncomfortable zones. I mean, the way the ventriloquist here, played by Michael Redgrave, falls apart and becomes an absolute mess it's not funny drunk. It's kind of disturbing and upsetting.
It's a very legitimate depiction of somebody going down the rabbit hole with alcoholism, because some of the encounters, like in that bar, so the way that he's behaving towards the other ventriloquist who's just trying to help him feels very real to situations that I've been in with friends who are messing themselves up, and it really felt uncomfortable because it hit a chord with me.
Yeah, it's messy drunk. It's scary drunk. It's grim, and you're the victim of it. I should probably actually say their names at some point. Maxwell Freer is our main ventriloquist, played by Michael Redgrave. I think is it Sylvester? Yes, Sylvester Key is the is a poor chap that Maxwell ends up shooting. Maxwell does absolutely nothing wrong. He just turns up to see the show, and Maxwell's sort of paranoia or gay interest, depending on your preference, leads to him ruining Sylvester's life. And it's just pure tragedy, and it's very ugly and unvarnished.
I did find it funny how even after Freya, that's how you say his name, right? Freya has shot Sylvester. When Hugo goes to see him in the prison, he's still like, "Well, I'm off for Sylvester now. So long.
Yes.
Sorry, you're stuck here."
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you? I was going to go follow that up next. What did you guys think of that particular moment in that episode where Hugo's basically still being a dick to what's his name? Freya?
Maxwell
Freya. And obviously, Freya goes a bit nuts and starts, smashing up Hugo. I found the psychiatrist's reaction to that really interesting. Almost like someone being killed in that moment, because he smothers it first, doesn't he? And then like sort of throws it on the floor and then starts stomping on his head. But yeah, the reaction by the psychiatrist really sort of,
it's a rather visceral and brutal way to murder an inanimate object.
Yeah.
And that image that you've got on screen right now of Hugo with his face caved in is somewhat grotesque, in a sense, because if you're looking at it from the psychiatrist's point of view, he knows that whether or not it's true, Freya sees Hugo as a real person, so that from Freya's point of view, what he is doing is actually murder. So doing it in such a way, smothering him and then caving the skull in afterwards, he can't even bear to look upon the visage of whatever it is that he's just killed, is quite shocking.
Yeah,
because it sort of takes you back to the slap. It sort of takes you back to the slap at the beginning of the episode. The sort of the shock value there, and then you're left with this the escalation of that.
Yeah, just kind of like with the mirror story, it's moving in an unpredictable way that just leaves you unsettled. And you also get that the psychiatrist lost control of this situation completely.
Yeah.
He was thinking he could just hand Freya Hugo and try and get a confession out of it that way. And then he just completely lost control of the situation.
Backfired heavily, yes.
Yeah.
And then what was the ultimate result? He ended up making Freya worse.
Yeah. Modern medicine, modern science.
And he comes away, he explains it away. He says, "Oh, nothing supernatural here." He's still not convinced. But that leads us to the end segment.
Yes. I did quite like this because it brought back up something that was established early on in the film, which is that one of the predictions he made was that the doctor would break his glasses. And you kind of forget it. It just slips into the background until as they're finishing up passing the drinks and they think, oh, well, it looks like we're all going to make it after all. All of a sudden, the glasses break and everybody disperses and it's just those two left alone because the doctor, instead of letting, what's his name? Walter, was it?
Yes, Walter Craig.
Yes, instead of letting Walter leave when Walter felt, right, now is the time for me to go, the doctor, in an effort to try and do what he thought would help, makes him stay behind, which is what ultimately ironically ends up being his doom.
Exactly.
Stupid German.
He was just asking for it.
Yeah.
We just had to show
I feel
him a lesson again.
I feel guilty for the sins of my nation.
I would possibly play that card if it were one of our 1960s films. I'm going to lean on this more being just the stereotype of Freud and Jung here. But all that sort of playing with inevitability is in there. And you do get a sort of foreshadow of the kind of dreaminess, because some of the characters are given a very obvious reason to disappear. Others just sort of fade out, you know?
They just go. For
Mm.
some reason, they all just disperse. I think one or two of them go because he asks them to get his spare pair of reading glasses from upstairs. Everybody else just seems to go, well, let's just have drinks in the other room then. Oh, actually, doesn't he ask them to leave so that he can speak to Walter
Yeah.
one-on-one and try and help him?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, he does. Yeah.
He does indeed. Oh. And then Walter is overcome, and you go into this quite it's brief. It's a merciless moment, really. But
He just chokes him out straight away.
it does. I want to unpack this a little bit. I'm not sure what order to do it in.
The dream sequence.
Mate,
Or the montage.
I might try and do this theory now. Like, this might not work. I'm not 100% on it. But it kind of occurred to me when I was watching it this time. There's a thing that later anthologies do where they not only have a wraparound story, but they rely on each of the individual stories within to give you information that allows a big twist in... sorry, something caught in my throat there. That allows a big twist in the wraparound story to make sense. That might not make a lot of sense. It's a bit abstract. If you think back to the Black Mirror Christmas special, that did this amazingly. It fed in little bits of information into the world so that when you got to the end, all these things could be put together in a massive twist and surprise you. But you realise you'd got the information all along.
Yeah, the Black Museum episode of Black Mirror tries to do that as well, just doesn't do it as well, as in my opinion.
In fairness, it's blooming hard. I really do think the White Christmas episode is a huge leap forward in
It's a classic.
this kind of storytelling. Excuse me there. So in this, I was I thought there might be a little bit of that energy. As in, if this is all a dream in Walter Craig's head, he's effectively recounting all the stories, right? And then I thought, there's some stuff in basically every story that relates to his situation. So we'll go for the Hugo the Dummy section. Walter Craig talks about the fear of being controlled, the fear of something puppeting him. I don't think he actually says puppet, but moving without volition, he says. Something else is controlling him. He's also notably shorter than the psychiatrist, and finishes off by strangling him. When we next see Hugo, he also strangles, and we have the image of the smaller person strangling the larger person. So we've got that sort of fear of losing control of yourself and strangling in the Hugo story. We have strangling in the Haunted Mirror story, and also the idea of, again, looking around your surroundings and finding them completely unfamiliar and weird and not what you expect them to be, as Walter Craig finds when he comes into this house. You have from the first story that central fear of predestination, that he can't escape this, that this is a doom that's on him and he can't get away from it. That's fed into it as well. So all these little stories that he's telling are containing a part of the fear of his overall nightmare. Now, Sally's story, I'm writing off the golfers, obviously, but Sally's story I find a bit harder to place in that, which makes me wonder if I'm doing a massive reach on that. But I thought I'd put that out there and see what you thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's a solid. I think that's a solid theory.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
joining up the thematic elements of each of the stories, other than the golf one.
Yeah, I think for Sally, I can only assume it's something about again turning up in an unfamiliar place and finding it's got a dark history.
Maybe if you were to include the golfing one, I would maybe go down the angle of cheating the system, because they're trying to prevent the premonition from coming true, i.e.
Well, Walter does for a moment, yes.
Yeah, so there's a moment where he's trying to cheat the premonition.
I think this is a reach, I'm going to be honest. I get what you're trying to do. This is definitely a reach.
I'm just trying. You can probably tell by my voice that it's a reach. So
you know, we like a good reach on this channel.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a theory I'm about. I like it. I think there's something in there. I need to refine it, but it was occurring to me when I last watched. But I mean, I do really love that theory about the reading of Maxwell Freer actually being scared as an artist. Actually, I think that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Well, what do you do at this point? Well, you've basically delivered the promise of the story. The horrible thing has come to pass, and what happens then? We go into just this flurry, this montage that is wonderfully disturbing. He ends up effectively appearing again in all the dreams, which I feel sort of helps my reading. That
this had the best imagery in the whole film, particularly when he's in the prison cell.
Oh,
interesting.
When
for me, it was this. This absolute horror show.
That was horrifying.
That was horrible. But for me, it's when all of these people gather up at the door of the cell door and all stick their heads through, while the obviously like a midget or a small child in the doll outfit comes for him, but at the same time, just the uncanny effect of it so obviously being someone in a suit made it far creepier for me. Just because oh god, there he is again.
Yep.
don't scare me like that.
He had to do it, you know. You see him again, and he's in there with just room for one more inside, sir. Oh.
Yeah, but all of them that I have a terrible. Maybe this is because I just have a terrible fear from being on stage in front of crowds playing bands. Just a fear of people blankly staring at you. The just generally films with imagery where there's somebody just abstractly, blankly, or with a giddy, smiling expression stare at you while something else creepy is going on. It gets to me every single time. There's a scene like that in Hereditary where they're being chased around at the end of the film, and the main character stops and sees someone staring at him from a dark doorway. It gives me goosebumps every time.
Yeah. Oh, what
sorry, Heinrich.
No,
it was
cool.
Callum. It was Callum as Hugo at the end. I should have known.
Oh no!
He haunts me even outside of work.
Yeah. The imagery in this is just absolutely brilliant. As you say, so much in it. I guess in that he's kind of been watched by everyone in his dream. You know, he's sort of the center of attention with his wild story. And then in the prison cell, he sees them all staring at him again. But they've got those horribly made up theatrical faces. That, I mean, this is a bit that made me feel a bit... You know the two old... The old biddies at the end of Mulholland Drive?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this made me think of them.
Yeah, I can definitely get that. This is a pretty horrifying image just by itself, really, isn't it? Especially that man in the bottom left, his giddy face. Ooh.
Yes. Yeah. That was one. Yeah, his face was one I was drawn to like almost immediately. I mean, he looks like an even more aged Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah,
that doesn't strike fear into my heart, but I get what you're getting at.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. It's got that. Or just they're over made up. It's very uncanny valley. Something I find really effective is this kind of swarming they do on him.
Mm.
Scenes where someone is swarmed, I find really unnerving. Creeps the heck out of me. Just these weird, not really human versions swarming him, carrying him off. They throw him in the cell, and then, as you say, Hugo's there waiting for him.
And then
Oh,
instead of
I
just
hated
going
that.
away, they just stare at him. It's horrible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If I were to carry on my reading from the Hugo story, this would sort of remind me of the idea, like I say, if you're in front of a crowd and they're not enjoying what they're seeing, you do feel like you're being swarmed and you feel like you're being eaten alive because all eyes are on you. So it definitely, it spoke to me on that level, this imagery did.
Yeah. It also it moves at such a pace until it gets to that final end of being strangled in the cell, and then we find ourselves in his bedroom with him waking up. And TCG, you weren't you were saying you weren't originally a big fan of this, so do you want to sort of talk about this bit a bit more?
Yeah, so it turns out the entire movie has just been one big dream sequence. Now, normally I hate that kind of thing because it just feels like such a cop out. But I quite liked what they did with this one because after he gets up, there's a telephone call, and he's been invited to a place for the weekend. His wife, or I presume his wife, is like, "Oh, I'd like to come," but he sort of dismisses that and is like, "Oh, I'll flip a coin. Heads, I'll go. Tails, I'll stay." So he's left it to fate. Heads, he goes, and it ends the same way the movie starts, with him turning up, and it is like a shot for shot. They've just replayed the. So I quite like that. I really like that because obviously at the beginning of the film, when he sort of like realizes that, I've seen all this before, blah 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 blah, and he's mentioned that it's a recurring dream as well. What you've actually experienced was that recurring dream, and now he's about to go and live it out. Or I posit that this man is actually stuck in a time loop, and he's forced, and it's almost like Groundhog Day. He's forced to relive this day over and over again, and he's remembering snippets.
Until he can break the cycle, perhaps?
Correct.
That seems like a good point to... I'll do a reading at this point. I'm in a difficult situation here. This ending is incredibly influential, and there is a thing we are going to cover that still occasionally runs in theatres, where they make a very explicit reference to Dead of Night, and largely use its ending. But we are going to cover it eventually, and I don't want to spoil it for you in advance. So I'm having to bite my tongue on it. But I really want to credit this film for having a big influence, but alas, I can't. So instead, I will just read to you a bit from Ivan Butler, his Horror in the Cinema, which is our go-to guide for anything pre-1968. And he spends a lot of the book kind of doing plot recaps, but his analysis comes in quite nicely. He says, "The linking story is handled with a skill apt to be overshadowed by the more flamboyant episodes. The gradual encroachment of strangeness and menace upon the complete normality of the opening party, indicated by the growing distortion of viewing angles, the slow fading of day to dusk, so much easier in the theatre than the film. These are still impressive today. After the killing of the Doctor, when the horrors come upon us all reality vanishes. Dominated ingeniously by the innocent fancy-dressed children from the party scene, the terror of nightmare is created in a wild swirl of distorted staircases and passages, the camera swinging and twisting about as Craig himself does in his efforts to wake up. The subtlest touch of the film, however, is a momentary shot almost at the very end. We finally leave Craig in exactly the position that we first found him, arriving at Foley's house in his car. Dead of Night, then, like Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, is circular. It will go on forever, 90% dream, 10% awake. So, but for this one shot, it might appear. Before leaving his house, however, Craig has been speaking to Foley on the telephone. As he speaks, we see, for just a few frames, Foley himself at his house on the other end of the telephone. That shot tells us the truth. The film throughout has been seen from Craig's viewpoint. Even the stories where he was not present are seen as told to him. And now suddenly we see Foley. Craig has not met him. The dream has faded. He does not know what Foley and his house look like. But now we see Foley. He really is there, waiting. This tiny shot is the most frightening in the film, for through it the dream becomes reality. This time it really is happening. There will be no waking relief for Craig. This time he drives to his doom. In no other medium but the film could the situation be so briefly yet devastatingly made clear. This is ghost storytelling with a vengeance. So he is leaning away from the time loop theory, which I don't know. I think it does make it scarier if it's the idea that this is predestined. I don't know. Do you think the time loop is worse, or the idea he's actually going to carry it out this time?
I mean, with the time loop side of things, I think there's more of a personal torture to that, and it's something that you would live over and over again. If I had to pick and choose, I don't know. I'd probably pick the time loop as being a more disturbing one.
I prefer the predestination idea purely because with the time loop, like Groundhog Day, there is the possibility of salvation. Whether or not he's going through torture again and again and again, there is the chance that if he's able to break the cycle, that he can escape from it. Whereas if this is just pure predestination, there is absolutely nothing he can do, which is far scarier for me.
I love that ambiguity. I mean, I have the horrible feeling that, yeah, it's the reality. He's just going to do it, and he's not going to be thinking about it. He feels he can't escape from it, and he's going to go through and do it deliberately just to prove it was predestined. It's a horrifying thought either way, and it's going to be very interesting when we get to the film that is very directly using Dead of Night, but I will have to not spoil it until then. But yeah, we are very much at the end of Dead of Night now.
Sorry, could it not be both?
I think there is plenty of ambiguity for it to be both. And like with the Hugo story, this film revels in ambiguity. So I think it's absolutely good for it to be either way.
Yeah, I was just thinking because, like, I mean, this guy's universe is essentially a film reel, which has a set beginning, a set middle, and a set end, and which could be played over and over and over again.
Harry, I keep bringing you on for Mobius strip films. It's unintentional, man.
It's fine, but also films that involve some level of cuckoldry. So this is a recurring theme. Apparently, I'm the expert on cuckoldry. Apparently, I don't know why.
Well, I've learned tonight, I have to say.
Yeah.
Oh yes. that poor police woman's husband. I swear, poor guy. Well, I mean, he brought it on himself if he's staying with her.
He did indeed. Oh.
We should end the. We should close the stream or near close it with the tweet I've sent you. Horrorshow.
Have a look. Talk about back in the blue.
Seeing as though we've looped back to that topic.
Oh, is that on Discord?
Yes.
Is that going to be safe for me to?
Yeah, totally safe. You might need to mute it though, just in case. I don't know if there's any music.
Now you've
Deeply
got me curious as
subversive.
well.
Oh no. Okay, I will play that briefly at the end. I think maybe.
Wait.
Oh dear, deeply subversive. Well, shall we move? I think in a very prompt and efficient stream. Shall we move into closing thoughts and scores on Dead of Night?
Yes.
Harry, would you like to go first?
What are we scoring this out of again?
Oh, we use the world class 12 burgers scale. Very sensible.
Yes, of course. That's exactly what I was taught in university. Yes, I can't believe I forgot. I would give this at least a 9 or 10 burgers. Discounting how tonally inconsistent the golf story ended up making it, I thought this was a really unique and wonderful little film that really did scare me a lot more than I was expecting it to. I don't often go back to films this old. I think the only film that I've watched from around the same era is Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, but that's a very different film. It's in colour, and I really do just love how the old-fashioned black and white aesthetics, how prim and proper everybody is, and how polite they all are. That hokiness adds to the creep factor for me, especially when it does get far more deliberately dark and more naturalistic towards the end as well. Because I don't think we mentioned that in terms of the performances as well, by the time that we get to the Hugo story, people have started behaving in a more grounded way. And it was just very effective. The way that the narrative built up and cycled around and became that loop was really interesting and an actually effective use of that trope as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. And thank you for suggesting I watch it for this.
Oh no, absolute pleasure. As I say, I love introducing people to films from not before they were born, before their parents were born. I mean, I'll be honest, I have to be selective. If we go to the 1950s, I'm skipping a lot of stuff which has an aura of cheese about it, but I think this has that sort of genuine creepiness, genuine disturbing factor to it that still carries power, and it's absolutely lovely to hear it from you. Yeah, it's lovely. TCG, how about yourself?
Yeah, do you know what? I pretty much echo what Harry said with regards to the golf story. It did sort of disrupt the tone of the film somewhat, but on its own, I found that very enjoyable still. But in terms of sort of like the main body of the film, I think this was quite innovative for its time, and that's the thing. Like, sort of to go back to, I think it was Harry, you said it earlier. You know, with the modern sort of sense of CGI and sort of modern cinema making nowadays, you kind of forget how sort of like simple it was back in the day, and there is a level of appreciation to the art that sort of came before, because it helped craft what we have now. Although some of the stuff that we have now is absolute dog turd, but that's beside the point. This film, I thought was very splendid. I felt like it was very charming in places. It had the right amount of frights. I loved the second story, the bit with the boy crying. Yeah, when he had his face covered. I think, again, Harry mentioned this, but equally, I was a bit like very, very sort of apprehensive as to what the kid would look like, and there was almost a sort of relief, and he looks normal. But then contrast that right to the end of the film with the puppet sort of taking on the form of like a humanoid form. That freaked me the hell out. Hated that. This had meme quality as well, which is always a bonus. In terms of scores, you've definitely got to throw in these for the golf episode. There's no question. Absolutely no catch up, because there was none in the film. I'm going to give it a 9, actually. I was sort of leaning towards an 8, but the ending of the film, the ending of the film is going to give me an extra 1, actually, because just because the ending the way that it is, you can get away with replayability. You can watch it again and again and again.
I think that's fair. It's very rewarding, and uneven tone, I think, is very fair. You might read a purpose into it, but I think it's also fair to say the uneven tone is probably coming from the fact that you got 4 different directors. But so much of the power of this film is coming from that ending.
Yeah.
Marina, I can't exactly remember. It's so long ago, I can't remember why we score it out of 12 burgers.
It's the industry standard.
Yeah, industry
Clearly,
standard around here. But yeah,
this is how they do it in the academy.
Yeah, it's how the BBFC. Yes.
Yeah, it's just how we do it. For anyone confused, we throw in ketchup if it's very gory and cheese if it's cheesy. No one knows what the pickle is, but occasionally you get a pickle in the score. Just to liven it up.
Would the pickle be, say, for instance, in a few of those scenes from Mulholland Drive, for instance? Do we throw the pickle in for those kinds of scenes?
Unexpected pickle. It could be.
I think you can go to prison for that.
If someone's been tricked by the pickle man, it could happen.
We are going to have to clearly define the pickle, I think.
The undefined pickle cannot be tolerated.
Like I say, for instance, if you end up covering, if you haven't already, Evil Dead, the first one, for instance, that scene with the trees, that's the unexpected pickle.
That's a pickle.
Yeah, there you mean Captain Supermarket?
Captain Supermarket. Yes. Sorry.
We haven't actually covered the first, second. The only one we've covered is the third, Captain Supermarket. So randomly.
Have you watched the series Captain Supermarket versus the Dead?
I haven't.
No.
Or versus Evil. It's honestly well worth a watch. It carries on the delightful tone from Captain Supermarket 3 with a lot more of the gore and guts from 1 and 2 as well. And it honestly, and it doesn't get bogged down in modern woke nonsense or anything like that, which was honestly a pleasantly surprise.
Is it on? Where can you watch it?
All 3 series were on Netflix for a while, but I'm not sure if it's still on there.
Let me have a gander. Sorry, you guys crack on. I'm just gonna have a quick look.
No worries. All right, for me, I'll do the closing one. I'm biased. One of the things that is biasing me to love this film is just how cozy it is, the old English aesthetic. I get huge waves of, I suppose we should say, projected nostalgia, because I never experienced the 1940s, but gosh darn it, don't you want to, looking at this? It's just extremely cozy English aesthetic. Goals, I absolutely adore it. That alone makes it wonderful for me. But in fairness, I say this about many old films, just that the fact that they're old gives them extra value in terms of insight. Same thing with foreign films. Just it's something new and involving and interesting, just because of coming from a different context. So I bump up the score for that. I also bump it up for the genuine dipping its toe into disturbing, upsetting, unsettling subject matter, particularly the Haunted Mirror episode and the Hugo the Dummy segment, go into some really kind of upsetting territory that is quite a lot, I think, for a 1940s audience. So even though there's not a drop of blood in this, it still manages to be very unsettling. Then the fact that it's all tied into something that allows for quite a lot of reading and interpretation and ends with an absolute banger of an ending that would go on to be flagrantly stolen many a time. It just shows the power of this film. So I rate this very, very highly. It's the uneven tone takes a little bit away for me. But my complaints about this are very few. I think it comes out at a strong 10.5.
Wow.
No ketchup, obviously, but 2 cheese. A little bit of cheese in there.
Just a little bit?
A little bit. Well, yeah, there's some cheese for the golfers and some cheese early on when they're kind of... Also, there's some cheese for Sally's Peter Pan would-be boyfriend, who I really don't suspect would be interested in her. I just...
No, there is undeniable cheese in this. It's not dripping off the sides. It's not running on your hands, but it's there.
I don't know, man. I mean, the guy losing a golf game, turning around and just walking briskly into the lake.
What do you mean? That was the most harrowing part of the film.
That deserves a slice all on it, all on its own.
I think first viewing threw me because within context of it being the funny segment, it being the funny story, watching it again, I will get it. But that first time, I was just like, oh, okay.
Oh my God.
I guess this is just what people did back then. This is what honor meant to people back in the 40s. What we've lost.
Moral.
Did I comment on that when that happened? Let me just see. No.
Have you got notes?
No. Oh, no. All I said was the golfer story is effing ridiculous, yet so funny.
Yeah, see? That's fair. That's fair. I'm happy with that. So that... TCG, were you an 8 or a 9?
9.
9. So we have a 9, somewhere between 9 and 10. 10
Let's
and a
say
half.
9.5 for me.
9.5. I'm really happy with that. I really am. And again, I've said this a few times, but it is such a delight to be able to show people stuff from so long ago, and you just get this good reaction. It gives you a load of faith that people don't need something. What's the phrase? Updated for modern audiences.
Yeah.
They can delight in something from 1945. And I know you watched Rope as well. Rope is a delight. I absolutely love that.
Somebody in the comments did suggest Fritz Lang's M, which I've not watched before, but do own on Blu-ray, and I have been looking for a reason to watch that.
Well, I think, was that Murgut talking about M? Yes, it was, Murgut. I was planning on doing an arc about the mid-century Germans in horror, and I figured we should start with that because it's quite contemporary. So we'll, when we get round to that, M will probably be the first one I cover in that arc. But I've got to think what goes in. It's probably a 2-part arc, to be honest, because the portrayal of the mid-century Germans changes over time. So we'll see. We'll see. But I think that might be everything for us tonight. So I will... I think I will do the horror homework now. Oh, yeah. Actually, if you want something else from relatively close to the period, Dial M for Murder from Hitchcock is wonderful. Grace Kelly in it is absolutely fantastic. Intricate plotting and surprisingly violent, I was going to say. Highly recommended for everyone. So the horror homework for next week is going to be Tales of Terror. That's Tales of Terror. Oh gosh, I need to just confirm that actually. I think it's Tales of Terror. Where are we? It is Tales of Terror from 1962. So we're jumping quite forward a bit, but we're still in the early days of horror anthologies there. Tales of Terror is based on Edgar Allan Poe stories, which were all in the public domain, and so Roger Corman snaffled them up. We'll be talking a little bit about Roger Corman. We'll go over Tales of Terror. It'll be a hoot, and we've got Disturbin joining us for the first time on the channel. So that should be fantastic. So get your watching of Tales of Terror from 1962 before next week. I will warn you, you might struggle to find it. However, I gather that many unconventional sites on the internet just have it right there. So you might be able to find it, somewhere in a BitChute direction. If you were to search there, you'd probably find it straight away if there were no legally available copies. That's about everything I was going to cover, except for TCG wants me to. There's meant to be a family-friendly stream.
I've not seen this, so I'm excited.
Hang on.
That's very interesting. Oh no!
Why would
Do
you
we
not
need to
even
censor
private
it?
your account?
Is this actually from her account as well?
Well, it's definitely her.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely her.
Oh,
Is she going
disavow.
cross-eyed
Deeply
on that as well?
subversive. Oh no. Well, she would know a lot about use of a bull. Am I right? Or her husband would anyway.
Grabbed by the
mate.
horn.
Oh dear. Deeply subversive, deeply subversive. Right. I think that's everything. You've got horror homework. If you want more from me, go and watch my review of the Craft Legacy called The Craft Legacy is Stupid, Hates You, and Would Probably Kick Your Dog. It is a bit epic, but I'm really proud of it. And do your horror homework for next week. At this point, obviously, thank you very much to TCG and Harry.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, as
me on.
always.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant to have you on. Great contributions, Harry. I love that interpretation of the ventriloquist story being about an insecure artist. For once, I think I might junk the gay reading.
Oh, thank God.
Well, my job here is done.
Well done, Harry. You have achieved what Harry Yun couldn't.
Well, I mean, I like Mulholland Drive. He didn't. It's obvious who's superior.
Confirmed. And we'll settle it all in a Hell in the Cell death match.
Oh, yes. Through the top of the cage. I'll elbow drop him from the announce table. That's what I'll do.
All right. I think there's everything. Thank you, chat. Also, good scores tonight. I'm so happy you folks liked it. That is lovely to see. I'm going to end it here. I will be getting the bonus episode on Twilight Zone episodes up probably tomorrow for members of the channel. So look out for that then. If that appeals to you and you want to give it a try, and you want to find loads of posts about Easter eggs of things allegedly hidden in videos, I can't confirm this, of course. You can join up for, I think, as low as $2.99 for a month and give that a try. Anyway, I'll stop shilling because I'm uncomfortable with it. I'll just end the stream now with thanks to you all. And yeah, thanks, y'all. Cheers.
#show.